So let's have a look at Metasploit. What we'll do is we'll have a look at how we can generate vulnerabilities and exploits and test them with the framework. Our main focus is to be able to understand whether we have set up our security correct for that vulnerability. So we use Metasploit to be able to generate the vulnerability and then use the framework to be able to test our security. So in this example, in this lecture, what we'll do is that we'll actually run on a live system. So I'm running Kali here and also Windows 7 desktop there. So what I'm going to do is run Metasploit here, and I'm going to compromise the Windows 7 machine. First thing I'll do is to just disable the virus scanner, so we'll just disable that. Okay, one thing you'll notice is that I'm running this in a private network, so there are no public addresses involved at all. You should always make sure that you run this in a private network unless you have the permission from the owners of the network. So we're going to have a look at some options and payloads that we can use for Metasploit, and then we'll try and gain some remote access. So we'll just give a quick recap over our vulnerability and pen testing, just so that we understand where we are. So we have white hats, and white hats are there to be able to understand the systems and to be able to look at any vulnerabilities and test for them, and hopefully set up the security which is required to thwart that threat. So we might have a black box test where we have no knowledge of the overall system, or a white box where we know everything about the addresses, the subnetworks, the instances, and so on. And then we often go through three main phases. The first one is really just to scan the network, high-level testing, find out about the organization, and so on. Then some sort of scanning with inside the network, running some tools to be able to look at vulnerabilities. And then the last part is the adversarial role, where a pen tester would go ahead and exploit a vulnerability to make sure that it could be exploited. And a key thing in this is that we have our code of ethics: never exceed the authorization limits, always be ethical, and always limit the damage and maintain confidentiality. So we have our technical scan, that's running our tools and so on, looking at port scanning, malware detection, SQL exploits, and that's for a range of risks that we might have with a number of threats undertaken by several types of actors. We can also have business scanning, which is looking at the human aspects of it, looking at social engineering, password cracking, data theft, and so on. So after the scanning has been done, we then go to this adversarial role, and that's where we actually go forward and take an adversary's role to be able to breach a vulnerability that we've actually found. Just because a tool says something actually is a vulnerability and might score it highly, doesn't mean that it's real to the business and can actually be exploited. So we might have an email breach, SNMP breach, malware install, and so on. So in this presentation we'll look at this adversarial role and how we use Metasploit. Often what we have is a CVE number, and we look up this site here to be able to identify the CVE number that we're most interested in. In this case, this is one related to Adobe Flash, and this site defines a severity level and when it was first identified in the wild. Okay, so now let's look at the Metasploit framework and see if we can understand how our exploits are created. Okay, so normally what we do is we start off with our CV number that we're interested in. We then use Metasploit to be able to generate an exploit. We then put it onto the host. Then from there we use the framework to be able to exploit the host and see if our security is set up. If not, then we need to understand what needs to be set up for it. So we start up Metasploit with our MSF console. So let's quickly have a look at that. Okay, so we'll just start it here. Okay, so you can see the Kali machine is at 10.200.0.208. It just takes a little minutes for the console to stand up. Don't worry if it takes a little minute when you first start it up. It's got a lot to do in the background. So while it's doing that, let's actually have a look at our Windows machine. Good, that's it starting up. And we'll just get the IP address from this, just so that we know where we are. And hopefully we're on the same subnetwork, so we'll be able to communicate with it directly. So it's 10.200.0.205. Okay, so let's just ping the Kali machine. That's the first thing we would do to make sure that everything is alive and working. That's perfect. And go back here. Good, our Metasploit started up. And we'll just do a quick ping onto the Windows machine. 205. That's great. Okay, so we have connectivity, everything's fine. So here we are here. This is our Metasploit console. You can get the version number from them. Okay, so the first thing that we often do is to be able to have a look to see if we can actually find a CVE number that we're interested in. So in this case, we'll look for the flash one. And if it's up to date, it should be okay, and it's found it. So we can actually even get some information on it if we need to. Let's just copy that. Oops. Let's try that again. There. There. Okay, just missing a letter off the end there. Okay, so it should give us some information about this, the vulnerability that we're looking at, and what the other links are for that. Okay, so that's our CVE number and how we can match that to the module that needs to be loaded. So we used to use MSF payload, but now that's going to be migrated away. So we use a tool called MSF Venom to be able to create our exploit. And the exploit that we're going to actually have a look at is a Windows reverse shell. So let's okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is to be able to, we're going to run MSF right from here, Venom, and we're going to run the module we're going to run, the payload is Windows shell reverse TCP. So what this will do is it will call back from the Windows machine when it's run back to the Kali machine. So we actually tell it which host to call back to. So the Kali machine is 208, and what it will do is it will open up a port, and so let's say the port is let's call it 1234. Okay, and we're going to produce an executable, and we're going to call it winexp.exe. So this is going to create the reverse shell. This is when it runs, it does a dial back to the Kali machine, which is at 10.200.0.208 on port 1234. Be waiting for it, and we'll call it winexp.exe. Okay, so it just takes a lot of minutes to run. We'll let it run, and what it'll do is it'll create the exe, which we can then put on our Windows machine. So what I've done over here is that I've created a share on this machine. That's great. So it's managed to produce it, hopefully. There it's there. Okay, quite a small little exploit. 73k. And what I've done over here is that I've actually created a share, and that share is called let me find where I've put my share meta. Okay, so it's really just a matter of properties, and then just share, band sharing, and then we give permission for everyone to be able to access that folder. Okay, so there it's there. So what we would do is that we would open up our home folder. That's the program that we've got, and then we would just dump it onto the shared folder. There it goes. Just takes a little minute. Okay, and then it appears over here. So what we'll do is we'll get Metasploit all started up, and then when that's ready, then we'll run this program here. So this is the exploit program, and we just check that we have disabled the McAfee scanner then. Okay, right, so now what we need to do is we need to run our Metasploit framework, and once that's running, we'll get it waiting for the connection, and it should be able to connect from the Metasploit to Windows machine. Just bring our presentation back up again. Okay, so we're going to upload the exe to there, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we're going to do a number of commands from there. So let's get started up. Put that one there, and that one there. Okay, so these are the commands that I'm actually going to use from there. So we've created the MS Venom, so we've created the exe, and if you remember, we created it on port 1234. Now what we're going to do is we're going to define our exploit handler. Okay, and so we then define our payload. Okay, so this is the same as we had before. It's going to do a reverse TCP connection, and we're going to bring up this meterpreter, which is going to allow us to run certain commands, and I'll show that in a little minute. Okay, so let's now have a look at our setting up the server, which will be set up on this machine, and this is the local machine, and we want it to be running on 1234. Okay, so now what's going to happen is that it's going to generate the payload required to be able to create the reverse TCP connection. The Windows machine is going to dial in to the Kali machine on port 1234. So if we just start this up, you'll see it's actually sitting waiting. Okay, there we go, 10 to 100 0.28. And what we'll do now is that we'll just run this program here. So this could be run as an auto-execute script. And hopefully what we should see over on the left-hand side is it calling it, making a connection, 10 to 100 208. Good, okay. Just let's see if we have our connectivity. That's fine. This was one I created earlier. So what I'll have to do, I think I've not copied over the right one. The one I created was 4444. Okay, so that should work fine now. Right then. So it's just that I didn't copy that one over. That one was there before and I created it on port 4444. But it should work if you copy it over. So then we now run. There we go. It's working fine. Okay, so that means that it's connected from 205. It's connected on 4444. Okay, so now this is us now in our interpreter, and we can run certain commands from here. Okay, we actually have connection. We actually have a full connection onto the machine. So we can do a dir. We can do ls. There we go. We can do pwd. And there we are. We can have a look around the machine. Okay. And the commands we can use are in here. Okay, so a whole range of commands that we can actually see. So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at the system information, and that tells us it's a Windows 7 machine, and so on. So we have a key scan program as part of this. So we'll do a key scan start. So it's now running. If we go dir. Okay, so we'll do key scan dump. There we go, dir, and we'll stop this key scan from running. Next thing we're going to do is going to execute a program, and we're just going to get the calculator to run up. Oops, there we go. Okay, so you can see, and we can actually kill that that program too. Okay, we can also take a screenshot. This was the reason why it didn't go to the 1 2 3 4 is because I should have taken that. So you can see it works though. Just cancel. Okay, so there we go. There's our screenshot that we've just created. If we can find it, this one here, and that should mimic what we see on the Windows screen. Isn't this scary? Okay, so that's our screenshot that we can take. So one thing we need to know is what our user ID is, and we can see here that we aren't the administrator, but we have some sort of account called Encase on this machine. The machine itself is called Encase PCI. We can also get the machine name. This defines the domain name or the workgroup name and the user role ID as part of that. Okay, and then we can even have a look at what the IP address is of the adapters that we have on the machine. So there we go. That's 205 is where we are. So what we'll do next is to be able to do a hash dump. Hash dump will take our LM hash database of the usernames and passwords. But what we see is that we don't have enough privilege because we're only a normal user of the machine. So we need to be an administrator to be able to get access to the SAM, the security passwords file. So the one way that we can do this is to pick a process that actually has that level of privilege, and what we're looking for is the NT system, and what we're going to do is migrate to that process to be able to get that level of access. So here we go, we're looking for the SVC host, and what we're going to do is we're going to migrate to 984, and this will give us hopefully the correct permissions that we require to be able to dump the hash. And there we go. So if we look at, so we can now see that because we've migrated that we end up with the full rights of the system account, and we're able to take the hash password database from them. Okay, so it's fairly easy with John the Ripper and Offcrack to be able to take these and to be able to export them. So the next thing we'll do is we'll now look at how we can create a remote desktop from them. So we have a couple of little programs here. So the first thing that we have is to be able to create a new user. So let's call them new user and password. Okay, so that user now. Okay, so we can clean up later on if we need to, but now what we'll do is that we'll enable the remote desktop service to be working on the machine. You can see there we've managed to put the new user into the administrator's account, so we could log back into that account. And now what we'll do is that we'll just exit from here, and now what we'll do is that we'll run the remote desktop with the new user that we've created, and we'll just connect to that machine. Okay, so there we go. So the user, there's another user logged into that machine. This user will disconnect. Okay, so let's go forward and do that. So the user then gets this. Okay, click OK to disconnect your session, or click cancel to stay connected. So there. Okay, so you can see there's the new user there. It's just been created. And we're just getting our desktop created. Just takes a little minute initially, but we can go back into our Metasploit and have a little look around while it's doing that. There we go. Okay, there's the desktop. This is this desktop over here. And we can do all the normal things. Okay, and there's our disk. And if you remember, this was the exploit there. So then we just get started back again. We'll just disconnect the remote desktop now. Get logged back in here. Set up our payload again. Set up our host. Remember, this is our host. This is the host that's been set up that the Windows machine will dial back into, and the exe we created is 444 because I didn't copy it correctly. Okay, so just looking for a connection again. Okay, so remember we run this, and there it's doing the connection back into them. And so just let you look at some of the commands that are actually in there. So there's our kill. We can kill a process. We can reboot the machine if we want. A shell will take us into another shell that we can actually create another session. We can look at our environment variables from there and set them. The ARP cache is obviously interesting. This will show us our ARP. Hopefully that should be the same as what we see over here. There we go. And if it had a webcam, we could actually record the webcam. We could record from the microphone, and we could also do the streaming from the webcam too. We've seen screenshots, and we can suspend some processes. We can get a token for the user, execute a command, and the basic commands we can use are like the Linux type commands that we would get. So we can actually create a folder. So just let's see if it's been created. Need to find where the slash is. And there it's there. There's a new folder that we've just created. Okay, and then we have a whole lot of other things that we can use. We can associate it with a channel, with an active channel. We've seen the migrate command, very useful in escalating the level of the access. Okay, so this is showing a live demonstration, and let's see if I can actually reboot the machine. See the command that we have to reboot the other machine. I think it's just reboot. Okay. You can see, there you go, it's rebooted. Okay, so that's showing you Metasploit and how Metasploit actually works. and given a few examples there. Remember what we did was we got the user ID. We weren't able to get the hashed password table, but then when we migrated to a process that had the right privileges, in this case the system user, then we were able to do a hash dump from there. Okay, from there we looked at how we could create a new user and then enable the remote desktop. In this case it was disabled, but then it's been enabled. Then we dropped out and dial back into it. Okay, so that's given you a quick introduction to Metasploit.